Empowered people make informed decisions that lead to living a life without regret. This is Sara Khaki and Shawna Woods from Atlanta Divorce Law Group, and this is the Happily Ever After Divorce Podcast. Welcome to another episode of the Happily Ever After Divorce Podcast. This is attorney Sara Khaki, and I'm joined by our very own managing partner, Shawna Woods. I'm really excited about today's episode because this episode goes out to all of our friends who see the glass half empty. And why I'm excited about this is because I'm not one of those. I'm a complete, optimistic, glass is always half full kind of person. But as I have studied more and studied people's patterns, and obviously the work we do in family law, I've come to a realization, Shawna, that there is a bright side to pessimism. And I do think that our culture very much honors the optimist, very much promotes the optimist. We're always talking about positive thinking, positive mindset, believe it's going to happen and it will happen. Think good thoughts and good things will happen, which all is true. I'm here as a optimist to say I believe in all that as well, but I definitely see the value of what the strong pessimists bring into my life and to the life of those around them. So let's talk about it a little bit. This podcast is really this episode's really meant for us to give a voice to the silent pessimist who hides in the back and doesn't speak up when they believe something is not going to go the direction everybody else think it's going to go, but they are, we love you, Whitney. But they're muted more or less because they're usually surrounded by very loud optimists, us, who want to move forward, push forward, and sell their vision with positive thinking. But we need those optimists, those pessimists around us, don't we?
It's interesting. I didn't think you saw me as an optimist. I don't know if I see myself as an optimist.
I'm so optimistic that I see other people as an optimist.
That may be true. When you think about it, you're like, are you a pessimist or an optimist? I feel I'm a realist in those scenarios, but I see what you're saying because yes, I do get excited when we talk about our vision. I'm excited about when we talk about our growth. I get excited about, certain ideas. And then there are those people who come in and, we used to call them quote unquote Debbie Downers.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. They don't have a name.
Why do we have to have those Debbie Downers who are poo-pooing our ideas?
Oh, she's so negative. He's so negative.
He's so negative. Yeah. But the truth of the matter is, when you listen to what they're saying, and maybe they do say it in a way that is not palpable to you, but when you listen to what they're saying, not saying no, they're saying, here's some problems,
yes,
or concerns, or even trepidation situations that I see down the line on this avenue of joy that you're currently on. And it really does help actually ground somebody.
Right.
Although you may not want to hear it right now, I do think that there is a certain value, very deep value, for people who see the darker side of things.
One of my favorite books that our firm has gifted out to many people is Adam Grant's Originals. And he talks about this in a chapter where he talks about that there is power to pessimism. You have to channel it correctly. So if you're listening to this and you're a pessimist and you spent your life being told that you're negative or that you're a Debbie Downer, like Shawna's saying, I really recommend finding that chapter in Adam Grant's book, The Originals. And he says, if you can turn that pessimist thinking into planning ahead for the challenges that could get in the way of your results, and how can you get ahead of those challenges? So a superpower to turn your pessimism into is becoming a planner. Is somebody that plans for the risk and plans for how to mitigate the risk. And he talks a lot about how some of the biggest entrepreneurs we look up to, like Steve Jobs and other big names he mentions, that we always talk about them as like being such visionaries and seeing things in a whole different world and pushing forward with it and believing in it. But he also mentions some really big names of people who weren't that optimistic and who actually created a lot of things from more of a pessimistic wiring. And I call it wiring, Shawna, because I'm not sure yet if optimism, pessimism is a nature versus nurture, but the older I'm getting, I'm thinking it's more nature, where you're almost wired to just think about what are some pitfalls looking ahead? What are some challenges looking ahead? Now, I do think some people, because of their nurture, take that nature and it might turn into anxiety. It might turn into worrying about everything. Might turn into being a hypochondriac. A lot of those things can happen. But I think that if your nurture has allowed you to take your pessimistic nature and turn it into a superpower of planning ahead, thinking ahead, and guarding and protecting what's most sacred, you could actually come out top.
I agree. And I'm glad that you brought up the nature versus nurture question, because I think it's an interesting one. And I do think that, sure, we are all born with certain personality traits and personality types, and one may lead itself to more risk averse.
Right.
And I think that's really, when we talk about pessimism, let's break it down and say, well, what is it? It's not just simply saying I'm a negative person.
Right.
That's different, I think, than pessimism. I think pessimism, when you're looking at it, is you're looking for the pitfalls, right? You're concerned that they're out there. And I can definitely see in the nurture how that will turn into anxiety, because all you're concerned about is the negative out there. Like, you can't see anything beside the negative. But bringing it back to what I would call a healthy pessimism, I think that people with that kind of attitude, and even certain expense when I'm in a pessimistic mood, or, I know you can be, even though it's very rare being in a pessimistic mood. When we're looking at that, we're looking at what is it I'm concerned about, right? That's the first check. And then saying, okay, I know there's a risk out there. Is this a healthy risk, or is this an unhealthy risk? And that could be a healthy risk to your organization. It could be to your person. It could be your family. Whatever it is you're looking at, what are my concerns? But I do also think that people who have those concerns often role play in their head.
Yes.
How to overcome those concerns or overcome whatever obstacle that they're going to see ahead. So I think it can be very productive, to your point, for entrepreneurs, because what they're looking at is, how am I going to deal with this pitfall that I see down the road? Right. And making sure I bring enough wood for me to cover this pitfall that I'm seeing down the road.
I mean, let's be real about it. Part of what we do in protecting the families we protect, one of the biggest things that some of our clients are looking for when they come to us is, what can you assess the risk for me? And, that does require opening up the dark, right? Looking at it and saying, okay, let's open it up. Let's think through the worst case scenario. Let's go there. Let's think it all through. Now, how realistic is that? And what can we do to get ahead of it? What can we do to mitigate that the damages? And it's one of the biggest things we have to do at the onset in our client relationships.
And if the worst thing does happen, then what?
Right.
It is your world going to implode?
Right.
It may feel like it.
And it doesn't mean that you think it's going to just because you're a pessimist, right? And I think that's where the nurture kicks in. Like, the nature may say you're a pessimist, meaning you're able to, you're wired to think about pitfalls and challenges and obstacles coming ahead of you. But it doesn't mean that just because you see them, you think your world's going to fall apart because you're a pessimist. I think that's when the nurture could have made you think that way, because based on our family patterns or what we experienced as a child or what our families gave meaning to, they might have said, if X happens, that means the end of this family. And then you just learned that that's a rule in your life now. But I do think that pessimists, and we're thinking about our managing paralegal, Whitney, right now. And I don't even know if I'm so optimistic. I don't know if I would call Whitney a pessimist, but Whitney definitely is wired to look ahead and think about why something could cause a problem or why something could be a challenge, right? And we rely on her heavily because she is the guardian of our vision, because without Whitney doing that for us, we would not be able to dream as big. We would not be able to be as joyful and excited about our vision, because we kind of rely on Whitney to poke the holes at it for us and tell us, here's where it's at. And I think that a lot of family members who are probably sick of always being the negative one at the dinner table, or always being called, you're so negative, you're so pessimistic. Because we see that a lot in our clients, where one person felt like they always had to be the bad guy because they were the one always saying, no, we can't spend money on this, or no, we shouldn't be doing that, or no, this is not a good idea because X, Y, and Z. And their partner in life was like, oh, you're so negative. Yeah. Oh, you're always saying no. Oh, you're so controlling.
We see that a lot in child custody situations too.
Yeah.
Right? No, we're not going to keep the kids up till 10 o'clock at night eating candy because it happens to be Halloween, but there's a school day tomorrow. Right. And those are certain choices.
Right.
I think there's good and bad in both. But you're right. And we need those people. We need a Whitney. Everybody needs a Whitney. You can't have ours, but everybody needs one.
That's right.
Because one of the things that she does that is so good, and one of the things that people with this type of mindset and mentality do, is point out for us, I know you've got this great idea, but you're not a balloon floating in the sky. Yeah. We need to tether you.
That's right.
We need to ground you. We need to figure out, how can we do this wonderful idea without you jumping off a ledge, right? With no parachute. And they're the ones who pack our parachutes, right? And they're the ones who double check our parachutes. And they're the ones who make sure that we have an extra parachute that we're taking with us, because they're very concerned about what's down the road. And we need them, right? And I do think that, yes, I think that can provide strain on any relationship, because you want somebody to be in the moment with you, right? Feel the joy and get excited. But without this type of person, your feeling the joy may be over very quickly, because you weren't looking for the dangers ahead. And I think it's a very healthy mindset. And if two people who have, an optimism and a pessimism get together, I do think it can be a beautiful relationship. With anything, you have to work at it.
Yeah.
But recognizing the beauty of that other person. Right. We always talk about, you're right. We always talk about the beauty of the positive spirit.
Yeah.
The beauty of coming in and saying, it's going to be all right, guys, let's do it. But there's also a beauty in saying, hold on a second, let's figure out how we're going to do it before, we go in that wrong direction. Or if we're going to go in this direction, let me plan how to do it in that direction.
And, I think a lot of people think of optimistic people as light, good energy, and they think of pessimistic people as heavier, negative energy. And I'm here to challenge that. I had a personal experience with this. Myself and a good friend of mine, Lee Hayward, we were having a workshop, and we had a group of women in this workshop. And it was very clear that one of the women in the workshop was what I'm going to call a closet pessimist. Okay. So she was not wanting to be open about the fact that she's pessimist. But the funny thing is, we all could tell. And at one point in the workshop, she looks to me and another woman and she says, I just want to be like bouncy, happy, joyful energy like you two. And I looked at her and I said, you can be if you just embrace your pessimism. And she was like, no. That's just so negative. I don't want to be the negative person in the room. I said, you wouldn't be. If anything, when you fully embrace your authentic self and the way you're wired, and you don't fight it constantly, and you're not trying to display something else instead, your energy does become light. You can be a pessimistic, cautionary person who's here to bring light on things that could go wrong to other people. And when you embrace that and people around you see the authenticity in it and see it from a perspective of, wow, she's here to empower us and empower us with looking out for us, they are going to give more room for you to be more of yourself, which will make your energy lighter. And, we're talking about Whitney quite a bit. Whitney's energy is wonderful to be around. It's super light energy to be around. And not only is it possibly because She's surrounded by people who truly appreciate what she brings to the table, what she naturally, authentically brings to the table, and create room for that. But she also naturally has embraced who she is and embraced her way of thinking about things. And it makes her a wonderful person to be around. So I want to challenge the person who is a pessimist, but whether it's due to their family environment, family dynamic, or the culture we live in, has felt this pressure to put their pessimistic personality in the dark and hide it and not be upfront about it and get comfortable with it. You can have just as much light, joyful, happy energy as anybody else. It's just a matter of embracing it.
And keeping in mind that, just your pessimism, if that is what you want to call it, it doesn't define you, but it can be such an added value. Like
right.
Sara was saying, to your personality. Quite frankly, I would think that because you look at risks a little more closely,
right,
because you prepare for things, you're probably more organized, right? And that's going to make you more confident and more empowered.
Right.
Because now you have a handle on that situation. And I think that's part of what we're talking about, is not just saying, okay, I see the pitfalls, or I see there may be some pitfalls. But when you embrace that pessimism, what you're saying, and you take that and you make it your own, now I'm prepared for those pitfalls. Yep. I see them. And now I know what to do if they come my way. So now I'm not as trepidatious. Now I'm not as scared as I'm walking down the street, because I've already got my plan of action.
That's right. Now you can move. Now you can take action.
Exactly.
Awesome. Thank you, Shawna.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Happily Ever After Divorce podcast. If you'd like to learn more, go to atlantadivorcelawgroup.com/resources.